like I have to go through criminals just to deal with it.
We were at this very establishment, the Turf Pub, doing stand-up comedy at nighttime. And in between sets, we decided to go and kind of release some steam and smoke a little weed.
I will not answer to them for smoking pot, especially when the evidence involved in this case wasn't mine.
Who is Stuart? What happened to him? How does the Mazzeo family feel about the war on drugs?
No, I differentiate them. I think the pot for a social thing, if this is what you want to do, like you're going to sit and have a glass of wine, I think that's perfectly okay. But I think if you have to have it all day, every day, no. The other drugs, I think they're killers.
I think that in the next 20 years, all of the archaic fuckhead dinosaurs that are running this country will be dead sooner if I have anything to do about it. And then when the youth takes over, we can finally legalize across the board the one thing that should have been legal this whole time. Anybody who thinks that marijuana should be illegal is too fucking stupid to have an opinion. That's just what I think.
Marijuana and the war on drugs. Well, they're not going to win the war on drugs. So if you're going to, the only way to beat it is to join it. So you make it legal, tax the shit out of it, and make a lot of money. That's the only way you're going to win.
We used to be one of the greatest nations in the world, and now we're one of the worst, okay? I truly believe, without no joking, our politicians are literally misappropriating and stealing every single thing that isn't nailed down. And I really believe that almost every problem we have in this country is the fault of our government. We do not have one single government agency that isn't corrupt all the way through the core. Our entire country is like a body lying on the table, and the doctor is telling us that we have cancer in every single cell of this body, and yet somebody wants to try and save it. It's a joke. As far as the riots are concerned, to be totally honest with you, if the cops stop beating and killing and raping and imprisoning innocent people, we can probably stop getting our torches and going into the street. The problem is we're destroying our own neighborhoods and our own towns. If every time the cops kill an innocent person or an unarmed person, we march on the police station and burn that down, they'll stop. And I'll tell you something else too. If every time there's a lawsuit because of the inappropriate actions of police officers, the money that we pay those people when they sue comes out of the police budget, that shit'll stop yesterday. Because when they can't get a raise and they can't get a new car and they can't get bullets for their guns, they'll stop breaking the fucking law every single time they walk out the door. So, you know what? There's no fixing the problem when the people who are in charge of the problem won't admit that the problem exists. Anything else?
2013, a time of lawlessness and corruption in Arizona. But who do you call when it's the cops? Sheriff Joe Arpaio of Maricopa County was elected for being outspoken about illegal immigration. But after years of abuse of power, misuse of funds, failure to investigate sex crimes, rampant abuse of suspects in custody, and unlawful enforcement of immigration laws, he was finally voted out in 2017. The U.S. Department of Justice concluded he was in charge of the worst pattern of racial profiling in U.S. history, with lawsuits adding up to $140 million in litigations.
The only regret I have is the fact I can't continue, at least with a gun and badge.
Where is the Mazzeo family today?
Our idiot government finally used their brains and decided to make it legal. This is what I've been doing. I got into growing marijuana. A lot of work to do. I wish Stuart were here, but he's not. I don't want to die.
but I will if it is the only way that I don't have to answer to anyone for anything I do.
It is like playing with the clipboard, and he breaks off that piece, so it's like a sharp piece of metal, you know. So he picks up the clipboard and he goes either this direction, that direction, whatever it is. This is all you'll get from me. And he turns around to the judge, blood squirting out everywhere on the courtroom.
Stuart refused to pay a fine, do community service, or do any time.
And even if no one agrees with me that I am right, I don't care. You don't matter. This is between me, a corrupt judge, and a corrupt prosecutor. I mean, I don't even know if this thing will ever be shown. It's not even a drug, it's a controlled substance. Believe me, I have no problem. Go after the heroin, the coke, the meth. I support you. Listen to me. Law enforcement, judicial system. I have no problem with you convicting people that deserve it. Just leave the rest of us the fuck alone.
Almost like arresting type insane crazy. So every time I go with him, I just pray to God that we don't get arrested, we don't come in contact with police officers.
Here's what's going to happen. If this does happen, I will be going straight from that courtroom to a hospital. And they're going to put on the chart, suicide attempt. This is not a suicide attempt. This is defiance.
He is supposed to be doing all this community service, which he told me flat out he wasn't going to do to begin with.
As for your community service, not 1 minute. Not one. And as for you now, legally being able to give me minimum 30 days in jail.
Stuart is a loose cannon, but I like that because I'm more of a conservative guy, so I need a side of me that just is wild and crazy and just does things off the seat of his pants. I'm spontaneous, but nowhere near what he is, nowhere near the level that he is. So I love him to death just because he keeps me on my toes. He's adventurous. When I look for some adventure, that guy is the first one I call.
Stuart walked into court and defiantly slit his wrist in front of the judge and didn't walk out.
My favorite part, they end up tasing his ass like a couple of times, you know.
He was carried out on a stretcher, straight to the psych ward. This is an actor reenactment of the incident according to Stuart Mazzeo. Also, the actors are played by stuffed animals.
The representations you are looking at here were 6 women that were up before me. They make them wait in the jury booth while their paperwork is being done by the court personnel. Yeah, she was really cute, that one. This was my 4th or 5th time in court. I did my hair that day. I stood before the judge and I said, when Demetrius and Sam admitted it was their paraphernalia, you had no obligation to dismiss the case from me? He said, no. Did you do the community service or not? No, I didn't do the community service. Fine, you're going to jail for, and as he grabbed his calculator and started adding numbers, I turned, walked to my clipboard, I pulled off the metal piece, and I slit my wrist. Then I pointed right at the judge and I said, this is all you're getting from me. Then he hit the panic button and the cop came into the room. At this point, I walked back to the desk.
Now the judge is in his quarters scared to death because he just saw a crazy man slit his wrist in his courtroom.
When the judge hit the panic button, the cop came into the courtroom and said, "Clear the courtroom." The judge got out of his seat and exited through this door right here. The judge was the first one out of the courtroom. All of these women that were waiting for their paperwork started filing out of the courtroom. They had to walk right past me, who was standing right here. I could have taken any one of these 6 women hostage. Any one of those 6 women, I could have taken hostage. At this point, I had moved over, wait. I had moved over to the witness box, witness stand. The cop came across the courtroom and into the galley. He said to me, "Do you want to hurt anyone?" I said, "I didn't even want to hurt myself." He said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "He," meaning the judge, Jimmy Hernandez, "is going to drop this bullshit case, or you are going to watch me bleed out." At this point, he came up to the table, put down some tissues, and said, "Please put that on your wrist." Then he backed up. As soon as I said, "You're going to watch me bleed out," he got on his little shoulder phone and said, "I need to talk to the judge." What they were going to do was try and confuse me by having me look in all directions so they could tackle me or do whatever it is they wanted to do. One cop, I'm going to use one of the females, one cop came in this door into the jury booth because at this point here, go over there. At this point here, I had bled all over the jury booth. I had bled on the wall. I had bled on the bench. I had bled right in the middle of the room. And now I was over here, closer to the prosecutor's table, facing, whoops, can you get low so you can see both of them? I was facing him. The cop behind me, I heard. I turned and said, "You, get over there behind the bench," which he did. As I turned back, the 3 cops were standing right here. And they tased me, all 3 of them. I tried dodging, but they all got me. As I was running across the courtroom dodging them, they tased me and I went down, slammed into the witness stand, and laid there. Oops. Came and piled on top of me. The head cop pulled my hair back to see that I was still conscious and said, "Hit him again."
My favorite part, they end up tasing his ass like a couple of times, you know.
So they tased me for a second time. At that point, once they had tased me twice and they got their kicks in, then they let the paramedics into the room. Then they put me
on the gurney. And they said, okay, let's get this guy to the hospital. And see, the cops, well, they all surrounded me because they still wanted to be intimidating. Like, ha, 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 we tased you. You still didn't win. Before I let the paramedics take me out, I said, oh, stop. I'm not going anywhere until I have a legal document saying this is done. Another cop standing in the doorway says, I will be back in 1 minute. He goes out, he comes back in 1 minute with a document. He places the document in my hand, and then the paramedics back up, took me off to the hospital.
Which, to me, I kind of like applaud him because of the simple fact that he's a rebel and he, stood up for what he believed in. Just do it without harming your flesh next time. That's all I say.
How did this bloody action of defiance even start?
She wishes she had more middle fingers. Laugh!
That's a funny story. It started with a night of stand-up comedy. But we'll let Stuart tell you that story.
This is our spot. This is where it all began. Now, tell them about it.
Yeah, this is where it all began.
And
You ain't
he'll
going
let
nowhere.
Demetrius tell you.
So we went down to the parking lot around the corner of this building, and we were in Stuart's van, U-Haul van, and it was 3 of us in the cab. I was in the driver's seat, and we started to smoke up a little bit. Next thing I know, I see Arizona State bicycle cops riding on this street, turning into the parking lot where we were. So I alerted Stuart and the other guy that was in the cab that we got company. So the windows went down, cop came walking up, asked me to step out, of course. Stepped out, he smelled weed in the cab, then he handcuffed me over the back of the car while Stuart and the other guy still remained in the cab. And just for like personal reference, I do not like handcuffs outside the bedroom. That shit's bullshit. So finally they get Stuart and the other guy to the cab, bring him over to the curb and sit him down. They get me off the trunk of the car, still handcuffed, sit me down next to, a little bit away from Stuart and the other guy. And I noticed that I was the only one out of the 3 of us wearing handcuffs. So proceeded to ask why I'm the only one out of the 3 of us wearing handcuffs. So with that, went and talked to his superior officer, came back over, took the handcuffs off. I sat down. We waited for them to run all of our driver's license and write up all the paperwork for citations that they gave us. And they gave us a citation and asked me some general information. The citation was for a future date to appear in court, where you could just pay a fine, take a class, or contest it in court. And they gave us the paperwork, and then that was the end of my evening. I was on my way and went out.
Keeping in mind, I do not create victims. That is the devil in this detail.
Stuart had enough of the war on drugs and took the fight to them.
When it comes to marijuana, I think it's complete bullshit. Why are we against a plant that is naturally harvested? Not too much is done to it by man, versus cocaine, heroin, all those things that start out pure, and then during the dilution process, they lose all their purity and they get replaced with all these ingredients that kill people. So war on drugs outside of marijuana, I am completely against it. It kills people, whatever else. Marijuana saves lives. It's good. It shouldn't be a drug. It's a plant.
Yes. And it's not even about the jail time. I've done jail time before. This is about my rights, my privacy. I don't stick my nose into that judge's business. I don't stick my nose into that prosecutor's business. Even though they create victims on a daily basis, I do not create victims. I will not answer to anyone for anything I do. Period. And if the only way I can escape their corrupt grasp
Did Stuart grab a hold of his life?
I actually did something about it. And I knew it was going to work. Well, except for the part of being tased by 3 cops at the same time. That part I wasn't expecting.
I was.
Well, I figured 1 would do it, but 3 of them, and then to hit me again when I was down, it was... you know what? Considering it was such an extreme act, and I did get tasered twice by 3 cops, I still won. Because I did not let them just be the corrupt game players that they are. I called their bluff, and I won. If the cop wants to write me a ticket for smoking pot, your day's not going to go the way you thought it was. I don't answer to you anymore. The first time I saw her, actually, was Halloween. And I told her I had to talk to her. So we went into the bathroom, and while I painted her face like Gene Simmons for Halloween, I told her what happened. And I think she took it rather amazingly well.
Stuart had enough of the war on drugs and took the fight to them. But is that what a civilized society does?
Besides it being a total farce, geez, God, where do I start? Our government, perpetuating this war on drugs, is one of the biggest drug dealers on the planet. There are people in prison that do not belong in prison. There are victims being created every day just so they can feed a bank account. There's nothing good about the war on drugs. There's nothing good about the war on drugs. It doesn't work. It's not working.
I'd like to say that there are certain things that are acceptable and things that aren't. If you're smoking pot and driving down the street, you're going to get a ticket, you deserve it. Because it would be like having a drink or having a beer while you're driving. It's against the law. You want to smoke pot in your house, in your yard, or out where you are, but not while you're driving, or not drive after you've been smoking it. I don't care what any pot smoker says, your brain is not functioning properly if you're high on pot. You should not be behind the wheel of a car. Period. I think that you go to extremes sometimes. One extreme isn't necessary, but you think it is. But it's been an ongoing thing, and I don't know how to get through to you, that there are certain things in a civilized world you don't do. And there's certain things around civilized people you don't do. And just because it's your right to do it doesn't mean it's acceptable.
Yeah, you know what? I would agree with you. I would agree with you. But, the people that were involved in this, they weren't civilized. They weren't decent. They were corrupt. They used evidence that they knew wasn't mine to not only prosecute, but convict. They left me no choice. No cop, no lawyer, no judge would listen to anything I had to say.
So, yeah, extreme, and yes, I do agree with you. But when your opponent is just this corrupt, vicious machine that has the power to squash you, you know, you do what you have to do. The irrational becomes rational. You know?
I don't know.
But you're still my mommy, and I love you.
Hello again. Well, it's been a couple of years, I think, since the first time I was interviewed. I can't even remember what I was saying back then. I'm sure it was something very insightful. But since then, we've had COVID-19 destroy our world and shut down just about every business in the country, mine included. So I, as you can see, got into growing marijuana. It was very expensive to do it legally, but I twisted my arm and I got it done legally. But now the idiots in Washington decided to use their brain for once and make it legal. So now anybody can do it, but not as good as I do it. This is one of 4 rooms that we have, and these are my children. So this is our vegetating room. We start them here, and then we move them into the other room where we flower them. I would show you, but we haven't reached that point yet, so there's not much to see. So I thought, with as much pot as Stuart smokes, and the fact that I gotta pay for it, I probably should get into growing it instead of buying it. So I've been doing it for a while, and I'm getting pretty good. Be nice if he was here to help. A lot of work to do, but I guess I'll just have to carry on by myself. So, don't know what else to say. Just good luck to everybody out there. Get high every day, and that's about it. I'll get back to work now. You know, these plants, they don't just grow themselves.
Stuart is somewhere hard at work as quality control for the Mazzeo farm.
Babies. There you go. Get something to eat. Yeah.
In other words, smoking all Stephen's pot.
Would you rather have a martyr or a son?
A son.
Well, of course she's gonna say that. She's my mother. I mean, really?
And you know, I'm not going to let them do it to me. I am not going to let them do it to me. I don't care who agrees with me. I don't care who likes it. I don't care. I am not going to answer to them for this or anything I have done in my whole life.
It's kind of funny. We could make $1 trillion a year taxing it and save $100 billion a year not sending people to prison, but instead we're going to fire our teachers and replace our tires because of the potholes in the road.
about Stuart opening his wrist in court?
Stuart. It's something. But he did leave a note on his wall before he went to court saying goodbye and take care of Bella. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I thought he was going to jail. I didn't think he was going to, like, slit his wrist or anything like that. But since he did, and now they outlaw clipboards in courtrooms because of him, it's a lethal weapon now. It's added to the list along with Uzis and hand grenades. So now it's hand grenades, Uzis, and clipboards thanks to Stuart. The world has him to thank for that.
Well, I once saw him in the hospital after he was done. I was preparing to tell him how fucking stupid and counterproductive that was. And before I could stick my foot in my mouth, he told me how the judge dropped all of his penalties on his sentence. So
So, now I try and make people laugh. Sometimes it works. Sometimes we need bail money. It happens. It happens.